the chat room. Holy moly, we've got a weekend and teams who want to continue to have a chance to play for a national title, including one that's in Waco. In fact, they're probably here at any moment now. TCU, Baylor tomorrow, Fox, and again, that game at 11 o'clock. We'll have our pregame at 9 o'clock. Paul, if Baylor doesn't force turnovers, now I don't know who they're going to be because we don't know from week to week, but if they don't get a couple of turnovers, can they beat TCU?
No. And look, the games that they didn't get turnovers in this year, for the most part, they haven't won. And they had started to turn the corner on that, but then, Kansas State just came in here and played a completely nearly flawless game all the way up and down both sides of the ball. So I think this team's just gotten more confusing. Had they lost that game 31-24, I would have been like, well, I mean, that's kind of how they've lost games this year. They're in it until they're not, and then made a couple mistakes here and there. But I don't know how this team's going to respond to a blowout. I mean, that was humiliating at home for them. And how do you bounce back from that? How do you bounce back from that? Not only with that, it's not like you get the worst team in the conference coming in. You get one of the best teams, not only in the conference, but in the entire country is coming in to play you. A team that has owned you the last few years. A team that is your biggest rival. All those things, get into a little fall in the Venn diagram this week of bad for Baylor. So I don't know. They've got to get turnovers, and they got to make Max Duggan look human. But I don't know if that's going to happen.
They can throw it to the big receiver in Quentin Johnston, who hurt Baylor badly last year. They have Duggan, who can run it and throw it, and they have two really tough running backs. And of course, let's not forget about their special teams' ability to take a punt and go the distance too.
Yeah, I think that Texas showed that you can limit them last week. They're not going to just necessarily rip off 40 a game, although their average is close to that. Baylor's average is pretty respectable as well. But I was sitting there trying to predict this game last night, and I think I had a pretty good feel for K-State. Not that the overall win would occur, but as far as it being a lower scoring game, I think I had it like a 24-21 type of game. A lot of people had that at like 35-28 and, much bigger scoring. I thought, and I think I was pretty accurate in believing that K-State was going to play keep away and try to grind the ball away. I just didn't expect them to still win by 4 touchdowns because Baylor's offense was going to be so inept. I thought that the Bears would at least score a little bit and keep K-State's offense off the field, and then in turn, it's like a 24-14 type of ball game. That's not exactly what happened, but with this one, I don't really have any great idea of how it goes. I mean, I really don't. I don't know what to think in terms of kind of how this chess match is played out, because on the one hand, I think that you could very well see kind of a grinded out type of a game, but with TCU's defense playing the way they did last week and Baylor's offense playing the way it has, I mean, do y'all trust them to just go out there and grind out 5-minute drives or 3.5 minute? No, I don't. So, can they play the slowdown game? Can TCU play the slowdown game against Baylor's defense? Baylor's defense is susceptible, but I think that kind of plays into their cards a little bit, even though K-State was able to do it well. So I don't know. I'm not big on the slowdown game. I could see, a high-scoring affair, but then again, TCU with, barely giving up any points last week to a talented Texas offense. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see how this thing kicks off and then what it turns into as they sort of settle in after those first couple of, those first scripted drives for each team. How do they come out attacking one another? And then once that turns into whatever that turns into, 0-0, 7-7, 7-0, somebody, then what do we kind of see them both, start to try to carve out? And I do think that ultimately, yes, for Baylor to win this game, they're probably going to need some turnovers, to answer your question. And that's something that up until last week, they were getting at a pretty good clip all of a sudden and didn't get them last week at all. TCU doesn't really turn the ball over much, and they have a much better turnover margin than Baylor does. So the Bears are going to have to create something. I just don't know how easy or how much they'll be able to actually do that.
All right, well, here's what I said. And, Craig, you'll be happy to know that I changed what I wrote actually for our staff predictions. I called Grayson earlier today. I do believe Baylor will have their full throttle focus and effort Saturday. And why wouldn't they after they had their football manhood taken away from them by Kansas State? But TCU has the it factor, too many weapons on offense and special teams. Frogs get to 11-0, win their 7th game against Baylor in the last 8 years.
I was probably a little bit more caustic than that, just because my thing is, if anybody likes to pretend like they know what Baylor's going to do, you're lying.
Right.
I mean,
No,
so
true.
as I said, like we're fooling ourselves if we know, like, oh, this
You
is how
think
it's going
Dave
to be.
Aranda knows?
No.
He clearly doesn't.
And I think he's been pretty honest about that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he doesn't know that. Last year, you could say that about this team. In 2019, you could say that about this team. There have been those groups where you can say, yeah, I know how it's pretty much going to go. This time, you don't really know that, so it's hard to put your finger on what they're going to do and how they're going to come out and what wheel on the bus is not going to go round and round, and so you can have,
song.
yeah. So which one is going to pop the flat that's going to ultimately undo them? That's their biggest thing is that they've had games where certain things are going really, really well. And then there's another thing on the other side that will counteract the fact that was happening.
It's like your pistons in a car. I mean, everything can sound great, but or whatever that might be.
Yeah, I like that response much better. And to be clear, I just gave you some constructive criticism on that.
You made a good point with me.
Yeah, and I think that's dead on. And no, I'm not. I think mine almost exactly was that I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I absolutely believe they can win this game. And that's just how I feel is, yeah, absolutely Baylor can win this game tomorrow. I totally understand where some people are coming from, believing that this could be an upset special. I think a lot of the eyes in the country from not only, these fan bases, but, obviously Big 12 fans and everybody involved in college football right now is going to have eyes locked in on this game because of, where TCU sits right now. So I definitely believe the makings are there. And last week only should reinforce the possibilities of an upset and Baylor playing much better this week. So I get why, all the ingredients are there for that recipe, but I just don't trust the chefs right now. I don't trust them to make the right meal with the ingredients they have because we've given them ingredients before and they've just fumbled the bag and turned it into, complete disaster, burnt the toast, did all of that. So, if we were 2-3 games in, I'd go, okay, I'll give Baylor the benefit of the doubt. They can come out and win this game. We're 10 games in. We're 10 games in, and they're pretty much the team that they were at the beginning of the year when it comes to these types of situations. So that would lead you to believe that they do have a chance to bounce back well. But in terms of showing up, beating the number 4 team, unbeaten, who's been able to win every type of way, I just don't have that faith in these Bears to go all in on them tomorrow.
All right, the chat room, as I mentioned, is going. We'll get to predictions, our college predictions. Last week, Paul made a big jump. Craig stayed pretty much where he is, and I had a fall flat on my face. So if I want to complain about Baylor's performance, mine was just as bad when it comes to pick 'em. I'm bouncing back this week. In fact, I secretly contacted Levi to change some picks so that you would not steal them from me.
I made mine right away. I was
always do.
I was pretty confident in what I'm picking. I am a little bit nervous about Bo Nix, but I'm gonna stick to it.
Yep.